Hey, I'm Jenna Wolf, certified lactation counselor, parent coach, and extended breastfeeding mom of two. I fully understand the unique challenges of breastfeeding beyond the baby days, and I'm here to take your hand and support you along your journey. So toss that hair in a messy bun, grab a basket of laundry to fold, and let's get started. This is Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. Hey, welcome to episode 2. In this episode, I am going to be giving all of my juiciest, best advice and support for irritating behaviors at the breast. I'm talking about nipple twiddling, gymnurstrics, feet kicking, flailing, pinching your skin, whatever it is. Any behavior that your older baby, toddler, preschooler child might have at the breast that can drive you kind of nutty. We're going to be focusing on that today, and I'm going to be giving it all. I'm going to be spilling it all out for you. So, as we're entering into this topic, I want to start with the usual advice that we hear. The typical advice, the typical support that's out there, which is something along the lines of make sure you're saying no. Right? Be firm. Perhaps even stop the session, right? Like as soon as that behavior starts. Cover up, right? If it's nipple twiddling, cover your breast, out of sight, out of mind. Offer an alternative. So give them something else to do. And then make sure that you are always starting sooner than later because habits are hard to break. And this habit will continue on and it's likely to get worse. So you need to nip it in the bud. Start early, be consistent. That's the advice that is generally given. So I don't have an issue with things like saying no or even covering up or, offering an alternative. And generally the kind of suggestions that are given are decent. Like they work for some people. But here is the rub. Here is where things get tricky and why this advice often leaves moms feeling frustrated and not contributing to everyone's well-being. Oftentimes moms are looking to stop feeling irritated in the first place, and yet that kind of advice just seems to compound the irritation and frustration. The lactation community as a general rule, and people who are thinking about breastfeeding and offering breastfeeding supports tend to see it as this biological need and it's a biological function. And it completely is. It absolutely is. So, it's like, well, if they're nipple twiddling to give like milk stimulation so that the milk is flowing stronger, then, it's normal and it's natural. And that's valid and super true. But then things get a little tricky when that milk, so if the baby was, 7 months old or 8 months old and nipple twiddling, it's like, okay, yeah, this is just normal. And, maybe give them something else to hold. If you don't like it, that's it. Right. And then as soon as the milk is no longer like nutritionally critical, then it becomes a habit. And so it's like, stop the habit. It becomes all about the behavior. And truthfully, it becomes about what the behavior is doing to the mom. So it's the behavior is driving you crazy. So then stop it because you are not going to be a good mom or be able to parent well if you're being driven crazy. And that, again, true and valid. But there's something being missed. There's something being missed in that perspective and in that approach. And this is where the parenting, my parenting background and the knowledge and the expertise that I have around parenting and, developmental child psychology and these pieces come into play. And that is that no human being ever has a behavior simply because they have a behavior. There is always something underneath that behavior. There's a why that it's happening. And there's emotions that they're having when that behavior is stopped or, there's things going on underneath. And generally speaking, particularly with children, every behavior, like 99.99999% of the time has a need underneath of it. There's a need that they're getting met through that behavior, or they're using that behavior to get your attention because of this need that's underneath it. But generally speaking, they're trying to get that need met. And they're not cognizant of it. They're not aware of that need is there. They need support to do that. Their brains just aren't developed enough in order to understand that need is there and that this is what they're doing. In fact, most of us human beings are often not self-aware enough to understand the needs behind our own behaviors, right? So that being said, when you are trying to stop the irritating breastfeeding behavior like nipple twiddling or gymnurstrics or whatever, and you're not considering the need that is driving that behavior, then the things that you're going to use to stop it may or may not be helpful because the need will be there. So sometimes, luck of the draw, you use something like giving a silicone bead necklace for the child to play with. And it happens to meet the need because maybe the child's need was a sensory need and they like the feel of it and that works. So it works for some people, right? They might take that suggestion and bingo bango, great. But what if the need is something else? And then the child is given this necklace and it's like, nope, nope. And then parents getting frustrated, right? Like, okay, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Why aren't you just using the silicone beads? Like, this is what we got them for. And it becomes really difficult. And ultimately, it's like trying to use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail, right? Or you're trying to screw in a nail. Like, it's just not going to work. Everyone's going to be frustrated. So I'm going to lay out a simple little framework here for you to meet the needs that your child has that are driving the irritating behavior so that the behavior can stop, right? Like so that you can meet that need in a meaningful way and the behavior itself just becomes less and less relevant, important. Maybe it just stops altogether on its own without much effort. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is ask yourself, is this actually bothering you? So start with your needs first because your child is getting their needs met through that behavior. So they're not in the kind of needs deficit. They're not the one with the unmet need. You are potentially, right? So consider, is this actually bothering you? Is this truly a problem for you? Is it a problem for somebody else? Perhaps you have a sibling who likes to sit beside you while you're breastfeeding and the toddler is kicking that sibling a lot, right? So then it's not really a need for you, it's more a need for your toddler, right? Or sorry, not your toddler, but your other child, right? Who's getting kicked. So sometimes, especially with this rhetoric of like, stop it, nip it in the bud, because it's just going to get harder to stop later on, then we can think, well, it's not really bothering me now. I'm kind of okay with it. Like, it doesn't really bother me that they're kind of jumping around or that they're nipple twiddling or whatever. Like, it's actually not really a problem, but I feel like it is a problem because, what if later on it becomes a problem that I need to do something about it now? But here's the reality. Your child is maturing day by day. They are gaining new skills. Their brain is rapidly developing and changing and shifting. So, a habit that's starting right now might not be there in, a few months' time. Like, it's possible. So, consider that. Also, you may never develop an aversion to it or have an issue with the behavior. So, consider that first. Is this something that actually needs to be addressed? And if there is an issue, but it's not with the child or with you, there's another way to support the need that is there, right? Because the breastfeeding child doesn't have the unmet need. They're getting the need met through the behavior, right? So is there a way to support, if they're kicking a sibling, like, okay, well, what can we do about that? Like maybe there's something that we can do to address that first before we address the kicking itself, right? Like maybe you can stick a pillow between the kiddo and the sibling and that's that. And it's easy. That's okay. And maybe it's not, and that's cool. And if it's not, if there is truly unmet needs that can only be met through removing the behavior, then you move on to the next step. So the first one is check out, like, what is the real need here, right? Who has the problem? And then you're going to look at what that need is for your breastfeeding child. So there's a few needs that are normally met through these kind of irritating behaviors. One would be sensory input. The other is comfort. And lastly, it could be something like milk stimulation. So let's dig a little deeper into those needs. So the first one, the sensory input, it could be that there's boredom. Like the child is not getting enough sensory input and they're feeling a little bit bored. Maybe they're like, it's mid afternoon and they're kind of sleepy, or maybe mid morning and it's time getting close to nap time and they're not necessarily tired and sleepy, but they're just a little bit bored. They're ready to move on to the next activity and they do some breastfeeding and, it's stimulating to be doing the gymnurstrics or to be twiddling, right? They also might have some like big feelings, maybe some frustration or excitement. Maybe there was something that happened earlier, even if it's like 20 or 30 minutes earlier, that like the chemical hormonal chain of reaction like that happens after a child is upset takes time to fully move through. So 20, 30 minutes, they could still be looking for some sensory input to support their body calming down after that thing that happened. Also sensory input, like it could be happening around sleep times when they're actually supporting their body to regulate and calm and move towards sleep. So another one, like if it's comfort that they're getting from perhaps the kicking or the nipple twiddling, what they're often looking for is proximity and like attention. So generally speaking, mom's a little distracted, like on her phone or maybe talking to the brother who's sitting beside the breastfeeding, kiddo. And it becomes a need for attention. And when I'm talking about attention, I'm really talking about connection, right? Children need our connection. They need to feel connected to us. And this need is as essential of a need as food and water and, physical safety. And that's because young children require us to be there to keep them safe and to get them the food that they need and, to keep them alive on a very, very primal, basic biological level. It's not a secondary need for kids. Connection is a very basic primary need because they are helpless in so many ways, especially like a little newborn, right? But even toddlers, preschoolers, young school-age children, they're helpless without us. They're really vulnerable without us. So if that child isn't feeling a sense of connection to you, they may be nipple twiddling to get proximity to you and kind of reassurance that you're close. And there also could be a desire for you to look them in the eye and to speak with them, to them directly. So that they have that reassurance that they need, that you are there for them and that you're connected to them, right? Because if you aren't attached to them, bonded to them, you know, ultimately like in love with them, caring for them, then what's to say that you're not going to leave them, right? Like that it really becomes a very basic primal need of theirs. Like there's a reason that you're taking care of your children and, like not taking care of other people's children because you're not bonded and attached to other people's kids. Now, of course, like generally speaking, we would all care for a child that we saw that was in need and, yada, yada. But at the same time, like you're not going around to everybody, like in the store, every little kid and like taking care of them. No, you're taking care of the ones that you are bonded to and attached to. So kids need that reassurance that you are there and you're attached to them and you care about them. So if they start to feel that you're a little distant, now this can happen for so many reasons, right? Like they could be lacking that just because they are. Like there might be like It's just that their little connection tank is just starting to empty out a little bit and they need it filled up. And this happens very, very quickly the younger the child is. But then also through more intense developmental periods, this can happen too, where it becomes like they become needier, quote, needier, right? Like they need that connection more. Now, this could also happen because, again, you were maybe on your phone, or perhaps you were irritated or frustrated about something else, and they're kind of picking up on that. And they're like, uh-oh, like, my caregiver is agitated, right? And if they're agitated, maybe they're agitated at me. Now, this is all happening really subconsciously and unconsciously in many ways. Sometimes kids are making sense of it and thinking thoughts about it, but it really is like a very basic biological need that they have for this connection. So comfort is really this connection, proximity, security, attachment. And then, of course, there is something like milk stimulation. So milk stimulation or not milk stimulation, but like, yes, nipple stimulation, breast stimulation can increase the flow of milk. So particularly in the evenings, your flow may be a little less than it is at other times of the day. If you are feeling a little bit stressed out, your flow might be less, which stress doesn't actually reduce your milk supply, but it inhibits the flow of milk. So if you're already stressed out and then they're nipple twiddling to get more milk and you're more stressed out, then it's going to just kind of snowball and spiral. But yeah, again, it can be common if they've been breastfeeding a little bit more frequently. You may have a slight less like fast flow. That happens. So now you have considered number one, if this, like, whose need is it? Who has the unmet need here? And which need can be met the simplest, right? Like, so again, if it's just sticking a pillow beside you, like that could be enough, right? If it's truly like you are in discomfort and irritated, cool, like that's totally valid. So then you move on to number two, identifying the need that your child has, right? That they're getting met through this behavior. So it could be sensory input, comfort, or milk stimulation. So then you're going to consider ways to meet that need that doesn't involve you being climbed on or smacked or pinched or, whatever is happening. So let's look at some options for that. I want to note that this is not about distraction. So you're not distracting your child with something else, because when you are distracting your child, you're taking their attention away from their unmet need. But that unmet need is still present and it's just going to pop up in another area. This is something called miscuing. So miscuing is when your child is trying to get a need met and they're cueing you in a way that isn't directly related to that need. So this can happen and, it becomes quite literally like whack-a-mole, where the needs now are popping up in all of these different areas because you were using distraction to, take their attention away from the thing that they were getting their needs met with. And now it's popping up in all these different areas, and you likely wouldn't see the connection at first. You're just like, what is happening? Like, my kid is just stressing me out and they're tantruming all the time, or, they're having these other behaviors that aren't related to breastfeeding and it's stressful, right? Maybe they're fighting with their siblings or, whatever. Sleep gets disrupted. It can be all kinds of things. So do not distract your child. When you have the intention of distracting them, you're forgetting about the why. You're forgetting about the need behind that behavior. So now you can, knowing that you're not distracting them, figure out a way to meet that need. So sensory input, it could be wearing a silicone bead necklace for them to hold. That might work great. Or offering them a small piece of leather or other fabrics. If they like to pinch and pull, something you can try is having like a colander, like a pasta strainer, and putting like craft feathers or things that they can kind of pull them through. Sometimes they like that feeling, or other, so many little sensory toys exist on the market these days. It depends on the age of your child, what might work for you. Obviously, smaller babies have some limitations and there's things that might not work as well. And then older children might not enjoy something as simple as a baby might enjoy. So, you have to look around and find what works for you. But you will see what that need is. If it's sensory stimulation, then you can think about what can work in here. And then if it's like something like gymnurstrics or kicking or, preemptive support. So allow their bodies to wiggle and move before you sit down to nurse, or maybe stop the session and have a dance party. Give them something else to move their body with, right? They might really need that. So then when it comes to comfort or that connection, first of all, if you are on your phone, I do recommend to put it down. I know it's hard, especially when you're feeling stressed out and you just want to numb out and zone out. I get it. But if your child is having these behaviors, especially if your child is having these behaviors and you feel irritated, you might just want to put your phone on and be like, I just want to ignore behavior. Or just pretend it's not happening because nothing's working. But try this. Put the phone down and whisper really sweet words to them. Tell them how much you love them. Like, take some time to just revel in the smell of their hair. Tell them the story of their birth. And even if your child's not verbal yet, like, this can be a really, really beautiful connecting moment. This is a time where you could try holding their hand, right? That's a really beautiful way of connecting with them and helping them to feel that connection. And then something like milk stimulation, offer them the other side. A lot of times your breasts work like autonomously. So like your milk flow might be slowing down on one side, but not on the other. So just switch sides, give them the other side to try, see if they like the flow of that. You could try like a breast compression to keep the milk flowing. You can also, like, if they're getting frustrated with the flow and you notice that the twiddling or the behaviors are happening near the end of a session or like after a few minutes, you can just try shortening the feed with saying like, we're going to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And at the end of the song, then we're going to be all done with Mama Milk for today or for right now, right? So you can try that if you want to just take a little break. And then if they need more milk, they can come back in a little while, even if it's 20 or 30 minutes, and the flow might be a little faster. You could also use the comfort techniques, right? Comforting them to boost your oxytocin, which will help the flow of the milk. So sometimes some calming, connecting techniques will help. Sometimes you're the one who needs to like take a breath, come into your body, slow down, and it will allow the milk to flow a little bit faster. So if you notice that it's happening at times when you're stressed out, it could be a comfort thing where they need connection with you, or it could be a milk stimulation thing where you need to support your body to calm down. Ultimately, though, when it comes to meeting the need, get creative. You do not have to use anything from my list. You can use whatever comes to your mind when you are in that moment. And it could be a little bit of trial and error to just see what need is really underlying it. But then, just give it a go, give it a try. And sometimes there are combinations of needs at play. So you might find that, there is some sensory stuff as well as some milk stimulation stuff, right? And when it comes to like setting a boundary with it, that can be helpful as long as you are meeting the need as well. So sometimes there is a need that kids have for having kind of their world made sense of them, like for them, sorry. And it can be helpful for them to hear you explain to them that, mommy's nipples are not for fingers, they're for mouths, right? Like that can help them to understand what's happening. And then you can remove their hand and you can then try the other things to meet the need. Or maybe they just needed that reminder and then they are able to meet that need on their own if they're a little bit older. Like maybe they will, decide to play with your hair if that's comfortable. Like they'll just move to somewhere else, right? So yeah, you absolutely can say no. I wouldn't recommend just saying no, however, because no doesn't give any options. No, it doesn't really tell them what to do. And it can be really confusing for little kids to just hear no. It's like, okay. So I would recommend using a phrase like, when you were nursing, your body sits on my lap, right? Like giving them that really clear what to do piece as opposed to like, just saying no. And if you would love some more support around that kind of boundary piece or really creating the words to say and supporting yourself and communicating that clearly to your child, I have a breastfeeding toddler communication guide and cheat sheet. It's totally free. It's like a 16-page PDF. And there's this printable cheat sheet with everything kind of rehashed on it so that you can print it out and stick it on your fridge. And I kept it nice and the PDF is beautiful with all kinds of colors, but the cheat sheet is super simple so that you can just print it out in black and white. And I walk you through all of the different pieces of communication with your child's body language, tone of voice, all of those pieces. And I call it, making changes, saying no to the feed while still saying yes to the need. So if this resonated with you, I highly recommend going over to my website at www.ownyourparentingstory.com/guide, and you can grab it for free right there. I'll pop it in the show notes as well, so you can check that out. But yeah, so I don't know if I reiterated that enough, but get creative when it comes to meeting the needs. You can explore different things, try things out. Things might come to your mind that no one else has thought of, and that's cool. Like you and your child are unique human beings, right? So get creative. That's amazing. I love it. So just to reiterate, we're talking about all of those irritating behaviors at the breast. And the kind of framework that I want you to use or that you can use, that I support my clients to use is number one, check out if it's really bothering you, right? Check out what the unmet need really is and who really has the unmet need, right? Because your child's needs are being met by that behavior. So it's not an unmet need, it's a met need. And then if you really do need to make some changes with the behaviors, completely valid. Identify the need that the child is meeting through that behavior. And consider digging a little deeper and considering the time of day and all those pieces to kind of identify. And talked about sensory input, comfort or connection, and milk stimulation, but there could be other ones too. If you might know that there's something else, but those are generally the ones I see. So after you've identified the need, then you're going to meet it in another way. And you do not want to use distraction. We're not distracting because that is going to leave that need going unmet. So you meet it in another way, a creative way. I went over a bunch, re-listen to it, grab a pen and paper and write some down if you need to. And then, if you need some more support, grab the guide for the kind of articulation of the boundaries, if that would be supportive for you. Okay, I can't believe it. We're wrapping up episode 2. And if you are listening to this during the week of January 22nd to the 30th, there's a contest going on. This is launch week. Okay, we're having a party over here. If take a screenshot of yourself listening to this podcast of, your podcast player on your phone, or take a video of yourself listening to it, post it in your stories on Instagram and tag me in it. So my Instagram handle is own.your.parenting.story. So that will be in the show notes as well. Tag me in it. I'll repost it. I'll reshare it to my stories, and you'll get entered to win a 1-hour totally free Zoom call with me to pick my brain, to get coaching around all things breastfeeding, no matter what stage you're at, whether it's weaning or night weaning, or maybe you've got a newborn and you're having some struggles. Let me know. I'll hook you up. I am so excited to work with one of you. It's going to be really awesome. Okay, so there is one more episode that is out today. And if you're listening to this in the future, then there's probably way more. Go listen. Have fun. All right, I'll catch you in the next episode. If you loved this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. Also, check out my breastfeeding toddler communication guide and cheat sheet to learn how to say no to the feed while still saying yes to the need at www.ownyourparentingstory.com/guide. And that concludes another episode of Start to Stop Toddler Breastfeeding. The theme song is Little Balloon by Jenny and Tyler, and it has been a pleasure to share this time with you. I'll catch you in the next episode.